I won't try to dress it up. At their base, humans are no different from a flock of pigeons. If one bird flies right, they all go right. Every last one of them don't try to see anything but their own gain and their own hubris. They're all just an assembly of pretenders. For those kinds of people, it may have been alright for my mother's death to be swept under the rug, but I will have them pretend even more. I will stand far above that flock of pigeons, and I will control them. That will be because of all of you. And everything will start once I kill the president. Now. A vengeful ambition born from tragedy can give someone a drive so powerful that only death would stop them from realizing it. One who possesses these things can potentially become a monster in every sense of the word. A monster born from society's failures. This is what Diego Brando from Steel Ball Run represents. Diego was a much-needed presence in Steel Ball Run that had a lasting and significant impact on the story, being one that I couldn't help but root for, despite all the fucked up that he did throughout. With all his misdeeds in mind, he remains a sympathetic character that has context for why he became the monster he is known to be. I would like to make it clear that I am not saying Diego's actions were justified, or that he is not responsible for them, but that they can be understood, and that one can find sympathy for this seemingly irredeemable character. There is an element to this character that differentiates him from the rest of the cast of Part 7, as well as the very character he was based on, the titular Diego Brando. What makes this antagonistic force so likable and resonant is his emotional core, which is shown throughout his childhood, and how that influenced everything he would become in adulthood. Diego's actions derive from his hunger for power and success, as well as his views on humanity. And it was Diego's past that allowed these aspects of himself to develop. Nearly everything that Diego does and what he stands for is based on his experiences with humanity throughout his life. His desire to rise to the top of the world, his hatred for his fellow man, and his willingness to throw others away can be traced back to how him and his mother were treated by the world. He's a perfect example of nurture taking precedence over nature, making him quite a tragic character, considering how he could have taken a different path in his life if his circumstances had been different. Diego was affected by the cruelty of humanity from his childhood on, and this cruelty made him into the merciless bastard we know him as. As I've said before, understanding his circumstances is essential to understanding what makes Diego compelling. Diego was born from two people from an impoverished region of Britain. Their newborn son had become a burden to them, and they decided to one day bury their son alive near a riverbank and forget about him. On that same day, it rained so hard that it started to flood, and Diego's mother saw her son who had washed into the nearby river. Unable to bear the guilt of leaving her son, she called out his name and jumped into the river to save her son while Diego's father stood by and left them both. After saving her son, Diego's mother lost all ties with her husband. She changed her and Diego's last name to Brando in order to do away with any association she had with her husband, and was able to live as a farmhand, while Diego spent his time taking care of horses. They lived in poor conditions and had nowhere else to go, but Diego stayed kind and optimistic throughout his time on the farm with his mother. 5 years into their stay at the farm, the man that had arranged it started to demand sexual favors from Diego's mother, who refused these advances. The man proceeded to then sabotage the pair's ability to get food by smashing holes into the bottom of their cups to get back at them. The same man refused to serve the pair without proper bowls, denying them food over something he had done to them. Diego's mother told the man to pour the boiling hot stew into her hands so that she could feed her son. With the stew in her hands, she told Diego that no matter how poor they had become, one should never discard their dignity. Diego's mother stood firm while he ate as quickly as he could, but she suffered severe burns to her hands because of this. A year later, his mother's wounds would become infected with tetanus, which resulted in her death. Shortly before she died, she told the 6-year-old Diego to use the talent he had developed with horses to rise from the position he had been put in. And he did just that. But he would not stop there. His ambitions would only continue to escalate from that point on. In the midst of the mistreatment of Diego and his mother, no one at any point had offered to aid them in any way, and simply stood by, looking down on him. Diego considered them all guilty of letting his mother die. From that point, Diego became vengeful, hateful, and absolutely determined to get revenge on the world that had scorned him. Humans may have inherent qualities, but we are also products of our environment. The lot one leads in life can have a major effect on who that person eventually becomes, and Diego displays this very idea. Diego changed dramatically after his mother's death, and sadly, his kind-hearted nature had been lost, and was overtaken by absolute cynicism and hate. The innocent joy that Diego had as a child isn't there anymore. Diego seems only to find joy in proving his superiority over others and getting closer to achieving his ambitions. Diego felt a deep resentment for everyone involved in making his life hell, which manifested into an animosity for humanity and the world itself. Diego strove to prove the inferiority of those with power to him, and show them how little they deserved their position in society. He seemed to despise powerful individuals the most, as he could tell they looked down on him, and that those with power have allowed and enabled injustices like his mother's death to take place. Such people, in his mind, deserve no respect. He yearns to prove that he is the one who should have power, and that they don't deserve the air they breathe. If the world was as brutal and unforgiving as Diego knew it to be, then he would make it his, ensuring that he would never be taken advantage of by others ever again. He wishes to rise above those who would dare to consider themselves above him, to prove he's not like the rest of them, and that despite his background, he can rise above the oppression he's faced throughout his life, which is a very relatable sentiment, all things considered. The words Diego's mother imparted onto him caused him to form a strong sense of pride and conviction. This can be seen throughout his time in the race, keeping his dignity intact no matter the situation he was in, and never acted as if he was subservient to anyone, including President Valentine. Diego imposed a purpose onto himself, to avenge the injustices that had been done to him and his mother by rising to the top of society, all while maintaining his dignity while doing so. He had a burning devotion to remain dignified through it all, and I find this a redeeming quality of his, which complements his unyielding determination to avenge his mother and advance to the pinnacle of the world for his sake and hers. These aspects humanize this otherwise inhuman monster. While characters like Gyro and Sandman, whose motivations and ideologies are for the most part selfless, with Sandman wishing to return his people's stolen land back to them, and Gyro competing in the race to save a child from an unjust execution, what drives Diego is more akin to what motivates Johnny, as they both intend to enrich and improve themselves, but for different reasons. This parallel between them illustrates that they're driven by similar desires and are willing to go through the same lengths to reach their goals. Diego shared the dark determination to overcome any obstacle he was faced with that Johnny had, being an example for both Johnny and Gyro in terms of his sheer drive to win. The two rivals are also both motivated by their circumstances, with Johnny on a road to redemption, while Diego longs for vengeance. They complement each other incredibly well, though they could only see each other as enemies, and never had the mutual respect that Jonathan and Dio had in Phantom Blood. Diego never made any meaningful relationships with anyone, and saw any allies he made as expendable tools to be used and discarded. This was the case with Sandman, Wiccapipo, and even Hot Pants. He didn't care about any of them in the slightest. because of his ideology, he unfortunately couldn't bring himself to meaningfully connect with others. Diego's perspective is one of absolute disdain for the world he inhabits. His view on human nature is that of pigeons who simply flock to whoever has authority and instinctively do whatever they see the other doing. He calls them an assembly of pretenders that put on an act of kindness but never put it into action when it comes to taking on real issues that affect people's lives. They lack the willingness to act for themselves and don't go out of their way to do anything unless it benefits them. Diego wishes to control these people and see their selfishness and hypocrisy brought to light. He is also very much consistent in his criticism of humanity, as he doesn't claim to be someone he's not. He refuses to put on a facade of decency to hide his true nature. He is true to himself throughout, embracing the monster that he knows himself to be. He holds society in contempt, and has been disillusioned with everything the world has shown him. I think it would be apt to call him a misanthrope, one who harbors an overall dislike for humanity and society as a whole. Misanthropes are characterized by a general dislike, distrust, or hatred of the human species. They share an animosity toward common human faults and weaknesses in the people they see. This is directly applicable to Diego's mindset from what I've said. Disillusionment is something that all people in society eventually experience. As the flaws and injustices of the world are made more apparent, we may lose our faith in humanity and give up on others. It's something that can happen to anyone, and is another aspect of Diego that people can relate with. This world can be cruel, unfair, and unjust. Diego realized this fact and decided to take advantage of it. In order to deal with this rotten world he had found himself in, he aimed to minimize any vulnerabilities and be the one in control of the world that he was at the mercy of. Knowingly or unknowingly, Diego became a manifestation of the world he despised. The fight between Diego, Hot Pants, and Valentine remains one of my favorites in the series, mostly because of the sheer weight of it. Diego's character comes full circle in this sequence, and he's closer to his ultimate goal than ever before, as he confronts Valentine, who possesses everything that Diego has desired from the beginning. With both him and Hot Pants fighting for their own causes, he works in unison with her, devising strategy after strategy, eventually cornering Valentine with him finally at his mercy. Diego then states how he will cross the line of this wretched world that he was a part of and transcend it, finally bringing the world into his hands. Sadly for Diego, Valentine would not allow Diego to impose his will on his country, as it was Valentine's ideals of justice and duty towards his country that won out over Diego's ambitions in the end. I'm sure I wasn't the only one rooting for Diego in this conflict, and it was sad to see Diego meet such a cruel but fitting fate. Diego did not waver at any point of the story and stayed true to his belief to the very end. That, along with the fact that he believed he had won before he died, ensured at the very least that he kept his dignity up until his dying breath. His mother would have been proud of that much at least. Steel Ball Run is an incredible story that focuses on various engaging perspectives that complement the overarching plot, each with their own unique and nuanced motivations. Diego's is one that I find to be particularly valuable, and I hope I've demonstrated why this monster can be sympathized with. He is a character independent of all the other forces at play, who simply wishes to rise above all the others by whatever means necessary, yet retains a sad, sympathetic air to him. This is the appeal of Diego, and why he is one of the most beloved, respected, and impactful characters in all of JoJo. Thank you.